Hello? Are y'all on? Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, okay, just checking. It was so quiet.
I can hear you.
Super. How are you?
Good. Hope you are.
Okay, we are live, Miss Bullock, whenever you're ready to roll.
It is now 4 o'clock. Do we have a quorum? First up, I will call the meeting to order and welcome everybody. Thank you so much for taking time out to be with us today. The first thing on the agenda is to make sure we have a quorum. Lane,
Yes, ma'am.
Dean, Sharonda,
Here.
and me. So we have a quorum. We're missing one member, Dean. We have a series of policies on the agenda that we need to discuss. And we'll start with those first. Who's gonna lead this off, Lindsay?
I believe I am leading it off, Miss Bullock.
You are?
I think I've been the one that's been tapped.
Okay, have you been tapped to lead it off all the time? So I will know? Or what?
No, I don't believe so, Miss Bullock. I think just because of the nature of the policies today,
Okay.
I'm handling the policies.
Okay, super. And welcome. Thank you for being with us.
Always glad to be here.
All right, the first policy is 3102, I believe.
I believe it was originally 3102, but we're taking that one off. We're gonna actually taking that, that one needs to be taken off the agenda, Madam Chair. It's been removed from the agenda. The one that's posted online.
Okay, 3430.
3430, that's correct. So if you could pull that up for us so we can take a look at it. Ooh, that is little.
That is very little. My eyes can't see that.
Can you make it just a little bit bigger for us, Mr. McQueen? Thank you so much. All right.
Oh, yeah.
That's too big. That's good. Thank you.
Lindsay, somebody's saying something.
Yes. Sorry, Dr. Ellis was just asking me to explain why we're taking 3102 off the agenda. And the reason for that committee is it has to do with online instruction. And so the edits there were really simply to add language to say that the superintendent can make determinations for a period of days every calendar year to be used for remote instruction in accordance with applicable law. And right now, we just don't know what that applicable law is going to be because the provisions allowing for remote instruction this past year, they don't apply for subsequent school years. So there has been a bill introduced in the General Assembly that involves a number of provisions, but would provide for some the ability to set a certain number of days for remote instruction. But that bill is still kind of working its way through the General Assembly. So the idea was to take that particular policy off of our agenda until August.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
All right, then 3430.
Okay, so 3430 has a number of substantive edits, and if you'll just scroll down here. So just to give you a general, 3430 has to do with the school improvement plan that's mandated by state statute. And so what this particular the edits to this policy do, first of all, they've reorganized it a little bit. So originally the policy was divided into sort of part 1 and part 2 of the school improvement plan. And basically, you know, their understanding, I think this is our practice as well, or Nash's practice as well, is that, you know, most districts don't divide those up into 2 different phases. They're not mandated. And so the school boards are recommending these changes to kind of consolidate the process into just one continuous process. And so that's the major change here. I mean, there's a lot of you know, different language that's been moved around in the policy in order to accommodate that. There've been some, if you look at B3, if you go down to B3D8, I know we're scrolling down. So well, let's see. Yeah, there's a lot. So if you'll scroll back up there. So this is essentially some language that's been added to include some innovative efforts that can be included in the plan. And this is an addition, and this is in alignment with the requirements in state statute, or at least the ability that the board and the district have in state statute to incorporate this. The other edits are simply, and I'm just, if you'll scroll down a little bit, continue scrolling, keep going until we hit the next. Again, some of these are just to update these are just updates to the policy, again, to align them to the to language that's in the statutes. And so again, has to do with the what needs to be included in the improvement plan and the processes that need to be included as well. And so if you'll see under Part C has been deleted, and that information has simply just been moved up under Part B to like I said, to create this one contiguous process. And I think that is that's the majority of it. And then you have the changes to the cross references as well. Any questions about this particular policy?
Are there questions? If not, I'm sorry.
No, ma'am.
All right, if not, we'll go then to policy 4110.
4110 is health, immunization and health requirements for school admission. And the only change to this particular policy is to add the requirement for another vaccine, I can never pronounce this, the pneumococcal conjugate vaccine. Then that's the only, so I apologize if I butchered that. I have my JD, but not my MD. That's the only major requirement there. And then there was some unnecessary language there that's been deleted from section B. But that's the only, those are the only 2 changes to this particular policy.
Are there questions?
No.
All right. Was somebody saying something?
Nope, I think there are no questions in the room, Ms. Bullock.
All right, policy 4240/7312.
Right. So this is child abuse and related threats to child safety. The changes here are mostly what's the word I'm looking for? Cosmetic. But there are some substantive changes related to a slight change in the law that requires there's a new statutory requirement that child abuse and neglect information need to be provided to students in grades 6 through 12. So that's all the way down in section H. And then we'll go back up and I'll hit some of the other ones. So this section H here is new based on a new statute that was passed or session law that was passed last year. The deleted information that's down there at the bottom about the superintendent developing necessary procedures, that's simply been moved up earlier in the policy. And if you'll scroll back up for me, please. And stop right there. There's just, I think that they've beefed up this language, or they've moved it and they moved it to its own section, because it was earlier in the policy. They've moved it to its own section and beefed it up a little bit. And this is language that requires, it's a duty that the school system has had to report licensed employees to DPI if there are certain activities that they have violated. So for example, if they would justify any automatic revocation, so there's some certain criteria for that, or physical or sexual abuse of a child, those are automatic reports to DPI. And so again, those have been in board policy, but they've just been moved to their own section and beefed up a little bit. So those are the two major changes in this one. There are some other minor, like I said, cosmetic changes and some changes to the legal references, but that's it for this particular policy.
Are there questions?
No.
If not, then we go to 4334 slash, well, go ahead.
I think we might have missed a couple, Ms. Bullock. I think 40, we can just go ahead and do 4334. That's
Do
fine.
that. I'm in the process of changing my position. I was out on the sun and it's getting a little bit warm, so I'm trying to get where the area is, and I lost my spot. I'm sorry.
That's okay. We'll go ahead and do this one. So this is this has to do with excuse me, use of unmanned aircraft or drones, which again, I love that we have a policy on this. But essentially what the policy does and what the edits to the policy do are they just incorporate requirements, FAA guidelines from the Federal Aviation Administration. And so all of the edits in this particular policy have to do with requirements, the current FAA rules regarding drones. So I won't spend a lot of time on this because I don't really know anything about drones. But if y'all have questions, I'm happy to address them to the extent that I can.
Are there questions?
No.
Well, then let's go back and get back in order then. The next policy is 4260.
You are exactly correct. All right, 4260 has to do with student sex offenders. There's some clarity to the language that has to do, they've moved some things around, but mostly the policy isn't changing substantively. But you'll see up there in the first paragraph of the policy that they've clarified the standard for, students, the prohibitions essentially on student sex offenders being allowed to be on grounds or property owned by the school system where minors typically are. So there's been some clarity there. They've moved some things around, but otherwise the substance of this policy is remaining the same. And that section, that's the deleted language in section A, that's being removed because it's already addressed. If you scroll down, it's already addressed in section B. Let's see. Oh, I thought it was marked in here. If you'll scroll back up. Okay.
C. It's in the second one.
Not a C.
Yeah. Yeah, if you'll scroll back up and just hold tight on that for a second. And scroll down just a little bit.
It's removed from section A because the information is already addressed in
Right.
section B.
Right, and I'm just trying to find exactly where in section B we've got it. It's number,
Same thing in A.
right, yeah. Yeah. Right, I was just trying to find exactly where. I think it's number 4. All right. So anyway, that's all we've got on that one.
Yeah.
Okay. Are there
Four's
questions?
about being on campus. Four's
Right.
about being on campus.
Right.
Yeah, that's it.
Are there questions? All right, if not, then we'll go to policy 4302.
And just for clarity, policy committee members, this is 4302R. So it's a kind of subsection of policy 4302. It's just more specific rules for the use of seclusion and restraint. There's some pretty substantive edits to this policy and additions, and I wanted to flag a few for you. Essentially what they've done, what the School Boards Association has done is wanted to add some language here that can be more protective of the board and the district. So for example, there's a number of prohibitions that have been added. The first up here at the top is seclusion and restraint will not be used on students with disabilities for behavior that wouldn't otherwise result in seclusion or restraints for students without disabilities, unless it's in their IEP or behavior plan. And it won't be used based on assumptions or stereotypes about disabilities or students with disabilities generally. And so again, trying to provide a little bit more specific guidance, I think, to the staff, administrative staff and employees at the district in utilizing these types of interventions for students. Because, one of the things that I think that the School Boards Association is responding to, and they're responding to findings from the U.S. Office for Civil Rights, the Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights, is that there have been a lot of cases recently where students with disabilities are being inappropriately restrained or secluded. And so I think what the suggestions in this policy are to, again, provide more guidance for school staff and to also make sure that the board is, protected. And so I think if we go down to the other major change that's been made here is there's an added language right above a section B on prone restraint. So this is a definition of prone restraint. It's a form of physical restraint in which a person is held in a face down position in the floor or other surface. And a prone restraint doesn't include placement in a face down position as part of a necessary medical intervention. The use of prone restraint is prohibited. So just so you all know, board members, this is not prohibited by North Carolina statute. There are state statutes that do prohibit this type of restraint. But I will say my understanding, and I would invite anybody who knows better to correct me, but normally, we use training for staff, CPI training, so that they understand the appropriate restraints to use. And my understanding is that the CPI training does not train for prone restraint. They train for seated.
Correct.
That's what I thought.
Correct.
We use NCCDI. Okay. But they don't, okay. All right. So NCCDI is similar to CPI, but they also do not train for prone restraint. So this is a disfavored type of restraint by these trainers or certifying agencies anyway. Again, both of these are recommended. They're not required by the board, but I do think that they're good changes that have been recommended by the School Boards Association. And I think those are the only two substantive changes. There's some, and let's see. Yeah, I mean, again, these are cosmetic. The rest of these are cosmetic and just kind of doing some cross references, but those are the two substantive in this particular policy. Any questions about this one?
If there are no questions, then we'll move on to policy 4400.
So this is the attendance policy that you all spent a good bit of time, I think, looking at I believe that we spent a good bit of time looking at a previous policy committee meeting. And so what the school board's recommended edits are here is to just update the attendance policy to allow for, folks to self-quarantine if they want to for an additional 5 days. Because the recommended length of quarantine is now 5 days, but if folks want to quarantine for up to 10 days, this policy, the language in this policy would allow for that. And it would allow for that partially. If you go down to the later section, any other reason as approved by the board and a board resolution. So the board would have discretion to approve some of those types of absences if they don't fall specifically under the language of this policy. Any questions about this one?
If there are no questions, then we'll go to policy 5240.
All right, so advertising in the schools, this is a fairly lengthy policy. I will say, though, that the changes in this policy are, again, cosmetic mostly, and they're just clarifying some language and cleaning up the language. So, for example, you'll see in the beginning of Section A, the policy governs requests to advertise products, services, programs, or activities on school property as opposed to school grounds, at school events, or publications and other electronic or other media. And so really the language here, the edits here are really just to kind of clean up the language and make it a little bit clearer. There is a substantive change in the first paragraph in Section B. And this is consistent with the other changes that have been made in some of your other policies that have discrimination language or language that would prohibit discrimination based on a person's race, religion, ethnic origin, or sex, which includes pregnancy, childbirth, sexual orientation, and gender identity. And that's simply language that, again, is consistent with others of your board policies that have been changed in order to correspond with some changes in the laws in the last couple of years. If you'll scroll down, I believe the rest of the language here is, again, some clarifying language. The Section 1 that's being deleted, that language is mostly just being moved down to the old Section 2. So again, a lot of this is really just consolidating and tightening up the language in this particular policy, but it's not. The rest of these are not substantive changes. Any questions? No questions in the room, Ms. Bullock. I think you're muted. Ms. Bullock, you're muted.
Oops, sorry about that. I think we've done the policies then that we were to discuss. Did we leave off any? My sheet right out of order now since I moved.
Yeah,
We
so I think we,
Right, we added 3 based on, Serena, didn't we add 3 based on conversation with Bullock?
It was 3460.
Would that be?
3460 is
Yeah.
the next one.
Graduation.
Graduation requirements.
Okay, I've got to get my sheets back in order.
That's all right. And again, 3460 is just minor changes. So these are just changes to the hyperlinks down here. So there's nothing substantive about this particular.
Okay. Any questions?
Nope.
All
And
right,
then
5071, is it?
it's 5070 and then 5071.
Okay,
We can do 5071. And again, that one is, pull my sheet up again. Again, both 5070 and 5071 have just these minor changes to the cross references. So no substantive changes in either of these policies.
are there any questions about those two policies? All right, those are the last two then, aren't they?
Yes, ma'am. Those are the last ones for, I'm sorry,
For
was 4,700 on there?
Student
Oh,
records.
that's right. I'm sorry. Thank y'all. 4,700.
And I'm sorry, I'm not organized. I was till I moved. Now I'm not, and I have not gotten my pages back in order.
We're being kept on track. So this
Good.
one is another one that has only minor changes to the legal references at the very end. So this is one that I believe we've looked at recently, but these legal references have just been changed. And again, it's the same edits that were made to 5070 and 5071 to change the hyperlink for the records retention.
Okay, are there questions? Hearing none. Is there a motion that we recommend to the full board approval of policies 3430, 4110, 4240/7312, 4260, 4302R, 4334/5035/7345, 4400, 4700, 5240, and 3460, 5070, and 5071 for approval to lay on the table for 30 days. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded that we recommend to the full board approval of the policies mentioned to lay on the table for 30 days. Is there any discussion?
Ms. Bullock, I did have just one question on 4400. I think attendance, and I apologize for not raising this when we were talking about it. I was just going to
That's fine.
ask Dr. Ellis, with work, anytime you give people leeway, they tend to use it. I didn't know if trying to keep everybody in the classroom, if extending this possibly, I think it was 5 to 10 days, creates an issue.
So normally what we did is the health department kind of gave us our lead. Dr. Farrer and Krista Grant, you tell me, but we usually went with what the health department, if someone had to quarantine, we went by their guidance. So that's probably what we would do if we wanted to extend it to 10. You all can speak on that one, but that never really was an issue.
Yeah, and with the 10, that was when we were, the CDC actually cut their days down from 10 to 5. And so the health department just told us to follow the guidelines with the CDC. So no, we don't have any instances unless a person has COVID and still isn't feeling well and their symptoms have improved, then they would extend better, but I don't see us going back to 10 unless things.
And certainly not at the student's discretion. I mean, it would be
Right.
what the.
Oh, absolutely.
And just to clarify too, I think there's the language that's been added here that allows the board to make that determination. I think that's the language. So there's nothing that's being added to the policy that would allow the student to make that determination. Exactly. Yeah, that would have to go through.
Right. And there's an attendance committee that runs if a kid missed too many days, there's an attendance committee that the school can waive based on circumstance.
That was it, Ms. Bullock.
All right. If there are no other questions, all those in favor, Lank,
Yes.
Sharonda,
Yes.
and me, yes. I don't think Dean is there. Is Dean online?
I didn't
No,
see.
ma'am.
Motion carries. The next item on the agenda would be policy 2302. The chair of the board asked us to look at this policy. And I think if you'll scroll down towards the bottom, the part that's in question is board members' participation virtually. And there is a statement on here about a board member attending, not attending in person no more than 3 meetings in a calendar year. And the other part of that, and I can find it. If you scroll down,
I believe it's section C.
See,
Yeah, there you go. You just found it.
right, that's where it says no more than 3 times. But there's another paragraph that talks about getting approval from the board chair or the board 2/3 majority of the board. Can you scroll down till we find that?
But Ms. Bullock, doesn't it also state that unless you meet A through I, you can go remote at any time?
Yeah, but that's
The
I
three-
think-
the
and
three
help-
is just-
I'm sorry, go ahead.
The 3 is just limited that if it doesn't fall under one of those, 6, 8 qualifications.
Okay, well, now I didn't pick up on that, but Lindsay, is that what you're seeing this say? You still have not gotten to where.
It was saying, as described in subsection C1, for any reason, quarantine, isolation, stay at home, recommendation to limit public interaction as described in subsection C1.
Right. So are what you saying? I mean, my reading of the policy is that you know, under unless the board decides otherwise, remote participation has to fall under C1.
Right.
And it could even under that particular section, you still can't do it more than 3 times.
Okay, that's
Unless-
what that. Okay.
Yeah. Unless, and then, however, then you have the provision that says, however, in other justifiable circumstances, the board may, by 2/3 vote, agree to waive this limitation. So basically, what you've got is you've got to keep track of how often you're missing your board meetings or you know, not attending in person, and even when you, even if you're within those 3 times, they still have to be for one of the legitimate purposes that is set out in the policy. And then if you're outside of that, then the board can still waive that, but you kind of have to go and talk to the full board about that.
All right, yeah, that's the paragraph number 3. But my issue with that is this. We are adults. We have assumed the responsibility to represent our districts on the board. I would hope that none of us would just decide, I don't want to go. I just plain don't want to go. No reason except I just don't want to go. But I think when we say that we have to have a 2/3 vote to waive the limitation, my question is, when does this vote occur? If I decide today, if I've already missed 3 meetings and I was on remotely, and this is my 4th meeting, and I have something, a doctor's appointment, say, and I can't make this meeting, though I've already missed 3 in-person meetings, how do we get to that 2/3 vote? That's my first question. Then my second question is, what if the 2/3 vote is no, it's not approved? What happens? This is the meeting date. You've got an appointment with the doctor and you can't get there in time. What happens? Is that saying that you cannot participate virtually? Can anybody answer that question for me? Lindsay?
Ms. Bullock, I don't know if I can answer that question, and I'm probably being a dead horse here, but I keep reading that if you fall between A and I, you can participate remotely. But if your three, or I guess now it's 4 reasons for missing don't include employment obligations, a scheduling conflict, I mean, that covers just about anything. You can participate remotely 12 times a year. I mean,
Or number 3.
Is that what it's saying, Lindsay? Because that's what is fuzzy to me.
I just don't,
Yeah.
I don't read it that it's saying you're limited to 3.
As it says, or recommendation to limit public interaction is described in subsection C1. So, which is above. So I read what you read.
I've read a
What
few.
Hank read?
Check is one, as long as it checks one of A through I, you can do it. If for 4 times you just say, I don't want to be there, then I guess.
Okay, well then, let me
Okay.
ask,
I could be.
Lindsay, go ahead and answer for me.
No, I've reread it, and I agree with the other board members with their reading that as long as it falls within that particular C1, then that 3-time limitation does not apply. I misread it the first time I read it.
Okay, and I was
Let
hoping,
me say it's not artfully worded.
well, do we need to work on it then and artfully word it so that there is no misunderstanding? Because I think the takeaway from it, the way it reads now, might be what I read, the 3, and then go into the 2/3 vote. But when we get to the 2/3 vote, I would suggest that we reword that anyway, and that rather than 2/3 vote of the board, I think it should first go to the chair. And if the chair does not agree to waive the limitation, then I think it should go to the board, and the board has a simple majority, not a 2/3 vote. And I would suggest that I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I thought you were done. And that's only if it does not fall under those those items listed in C1, right?
But let me ask another question. If say you're at meeting number 5, and it does fall under A through I, no, yeah, A through I, it does follow under that. Who do you tell? How do you let people know? And where does this 2/3 vote of the board come in at then? Because you're right, it's cumbersome and it is confusing. Lindsay?
Would you like me to suggest some language?
Yeah, what I would like, if it's the pleasure of the committee, is that we let the board know at our next meeting that we are looking at the policy, and we recommend that we do some wordsmithing, and that we will bring it back at the next board meeting.
That's
Does
fine.
that work for y'all?
Yes, ma'am.
Makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Dr. Ellis and I will work on
Yeah,
some language
Because
and
I know that's what probably Mr. Sharp was trying to figure out.
Yeah.
Just so he could explain when someone asks how we're gonna clean this up.
yeah,
So,
we'll
Right.
work on some proposed edits to that language to make it cleaner, and we'll have it for you all at the next board meeting.
okay, will you keep me informed, keep me in the loop?
Absolutely, ma'am.
So,
We'll
Thank
keep
you so-
everyone in the loop to let you know.
do what?
We'll keep everyone in the loop. That'll be a we might want to send that out to everyone just so they can start seeing what it's gonna look like, because it sure looks vague right now.
It is very vague and it's
Yeah.
very confusing and it's open to interpretation.
Correct.
So what I would suggest then is that we just, I'll just let the board know that we have decided that we will do wordsmithing to this to make it cleaner and clearer. Do we need to take a vote on that?
I don't think we have anything to vote on just yet. I mean, if we're kind of doing research, I think we're doing
Okay.
what you asked of us.
All right. Well, is there anything else to claim our attention?
No, ma'am.
If not, thank you so much for coming, and the meeting is adjourned. Thank you for your participation. Have a great evening.
Thanks, Evelyn.